They used words like complications and precautionary measures, but their eyes never quite met mine. That's what I noticed first. Not the clinical language, not the scrubs and clipboards, but the way everyone in that hospital corridor looked just past my shoulder when they spoke. "Your daughter is resting comfortably," the nurse said. Third time I'd heard that exact phrase in 20 minutes, like they'd all read from the same script during morning rounds. My wife Helen gripped my arm. Not the gentle touch of shared worry. This was restraint. She'd caught something I'd missed, and her fingers were telling me to shut up and play along. "When can we see her?" I asked. Reasonable question. Normal question. The kind any father would ask when his daughter just gave birth to his first grandchild. The nurse's smile didn't reach her eyes. "The doctor will be out shortly to discuss the situation." "What situation? You said she's resting comfortably." "Mr. Patterson, if you could just wait in the family lounge?" "I've been waiting in the family lounge for 3 hours." My son-in-law appeared then, moving down the corridor with that easy confidence money buys. Brad Fleming, Yale Law, 6-figure salary before 30. The kind of polished presence that made my work boots and flannel shirt feel like a costume from the wrong decade. "Tom, Helen," he said, and somehow managed to make my name sound like an apology. "Thanks for your patience. This has been incredibly stressful for everyone." "How's Emma?" Helen asked. "Stable. The medical team is monitoring her closely." He glanced at his phone. Brief, practiced. Just enough to signal importance without rudeness. There were some unexpected developments during delivery. "What kind of developments?" "Postpartum complications. Nothing life-threatening, but the doctors want to keep her under observation." "Hospital policy. I'm sure you understand." I understood that he'd just used 4 sentences to say absolutely nothing. I understood that I'd been a municipal infrastructure contractor for 28 years, which meant I knew when someone was following a protocol designed to keep people like me on the outside of buildings I helped maintain. "Can we at least see the baby?" Helen asked. "He's in the NICU. Standard procedure for complicated births." Brad's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something shifted in his posture. Subtle, but there. "I need to handle something. Give me a few minutes." He walked toward the administrative wing. Not toward the maternity ward, not toward the NICU, toward the offices where hospital lawyers worked. Helen pulled me toward the vending machines at the end of the corridor. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Something's wrong." "You think?" "No, I mean really wrong. Emma called me 2 weeks ago, 3 in the morning. She was crying." "Why didn't you tell me?" "She made me promise. Said she was just hormonal, 3rd trimester emotions, that I was overreacting." Helen's knuckles were white around her purse strap. But she didn't sound hormonal. She sounded scared. "Scared of what?" "She wouldn't say. Kept insisting everything was fine, that she just needed to hear my voice. Then someone said something in the background. Brad, probably. And she hung up." I stared down the corridor toward the administrative wing. Hospital policy. Monitoring her closely. Standard procedure. None of it felt standard. "We should go," Helen said. "What?" "Play along. Act like we believe them. Then figure out what's actually happening." She was right. Pushing now would just get us escorted out by security. Guys I probably knew from contract work, which would make it worse. Municipal infrastructure meant I'd done HVAC system upgrades, security camera installations, parking garage lighting. Half the maintenance staff knew me by name. Being known made you visible. Right now, I needed to be invisible. We walked back toward the family lounge, and that's when I heard it, a sound that cut through the antiseptic quiet like broken glass. A woman screaming, not the controlled vocalizations of labor, not the exhausted relief after delivery. This was raw terror, the kind of sound that bypasses your brain and hits directly in your gut. The nurse from earlier appeared, moving fast but not running. Hospital staff never run. Draws attention. She keyed her badge against a secure door and disappeared through it. The screaming stopped. Helen's face had gone pale. "Tom." "That wasn't Emma," I said quickly. Because it could have been. The pitch was right, the timbre close enough. But something in my gut said no, and I'd learned to trust my gut when buildings didn't feel right. Different floor, different patient. You don't know that. I didn't. But Helen needed to hear confidence right now, not doubt. Brad reappeared with an older woman in a tailored suit. Hospital administration, probably. They spoke briefly at the secure door, then Brad keyed his badge and they both went through. The same door the nurse had used. Visitor badges didn't open secure doors. I knew that because I'd installed some of them. "Let's go," I said. Helen didn't argue. We took the elevator down to the main lobby, collected our parking validation, walked out through automatic doors into afternoon sunlight that felt wrong somehow. Too bright, too normal. The parking garage was 3 levels below ground, and as we descended the concrete ramps, Helen finally spoke. "What are we going to do?" "I don't know yet. They're lying to us." "I know. Tom, if Emma's in trouble, then going back up there and making a scene won't help her." I unlocked the truck, old Ford F-250 with 200,000 miles and a busted radio. We need information, real information, not whatever script they're reading from. Helen climbed in, still clutching her purse like it might float away. "She's our daughter." "I know." She called me 3 weeks ago, too, said Brad's mother was staying with them, that it was helpful, having family support before the baby came. Helen's voice cracked slightly. But Emma hated Brad's mother, thought she was controlling, overbearing. Why would she suddenly want her there full time? I started the engine, let it idle while my mind worked through timelines and connections. Emma had stopped answering my calls 6 weeks ago, just texts after that, short, cheerful, utterly unlike her usual rambling voice messages. "When's the last time you spoke to her directly?" I asked. "That call 2 weeks ago. Everything since has been texts." "Same." We sat in the parking garage darkness, engine rumbling, while the pieces started fitting together in ways I didn't like. Brad's mother, Victoria Fleming, old Connecticut money, the kind that came with board memberships and charity galas and the quiet assumption that rules applied to other people. She'd made it clear from day one that her son had married down, not with words. People like Victoria never needed words, just the slight pause before saying my name, the way she'd visually assess our house like a property appraiser calculating depreciation. Emma had told us about the arguments, how Victoria wanted to control every aspect of the wedding, the pregnancy, their lives, how Brad always took his mother's side, smooth and apologetic, but ultimately immovable. "We should call Emma's phone," Helen said. I already had mine out. The call went straight to voicemail, not ringing, just the immediate click of a phone that was either off or set to auto-reject. "Brad's blocking us," Helen said, "or Emma's phone is somewhere she can't access it." "Tom, you're scaring me." I was scaring myself, because I'd spent nearly 3 decades learning how buildings worked. Not just the systems, but the spaces between systems. The gaps where regulations overlapped, where authority got fuzzy, where someone with the right credentials could make things happen quietly. And I was starting to realize that wealthy people knew those gaps too. Just different ones. Legal gaps, procedural gaps. The places where money turned absolutely not into, well, under certain circumstances. I backed out of the parking space and headed for the exit. Helen didn't ask where we were going. We both knew, home, where we could think clearly, away from the performative politeness of that hospital corridor. Traffic was light heading back toward our neighborhood. Mid-afternoon Wednesday, most people at work. I took surface streets instead of the highway, some instinct telling me not to be predictable right now. Probably paranoid. Probably watching too many movies. Probably not. "Emma told me something else," Helen said. In that call 2 weeks ago, said she'd been feeling dizzy, lightheaded, that Brad's family doctor said it was normal pregnancy symptoms, but she wanted to see her own OB. Brad wouldn't let her. Wouldn't let her? Said their insurance only covered his family's preferred providers. That switching now would complicate everything. Helen's voice was steady now, anger burning through the fear. "Since when does Brad worry about insurance complications?" "Since never. The Flemings had the kind of money where insurance was a formality, not a constraint." "Did she see her own doctor?" "I don't know. She said she'd try, then nothing." I turned onto our street. Modest post-war houses, established trees, the kind of neighborhood where people still waved from their lawns. Our house was third from the corner, blue paint fading where it needed another coat, driveway cracked from tree roots I kept meaning to address. Helen's phone buzzed as I pulled into the driveway. She looked at the screen and went very still. "It's Emma." "What's it say?" Helen's hand was shaking as she read aloud. "Everything's fine. Baby's healthy. Just need rest. Love you both. Talk soon." "Let me see it." She handed me the phone. I read the message 3 times, looking for something I couldn't quite name. Then I saw it. Emma doesn't end messages with periods. She uses hearts or smiley faces, has since she got her first phone at 13. Helen took the phone back, stared at it. "Maybe she's just tired. Labor's exhausting." "Maybe." But we both knew better. I got out of the truck, Helen following. The house felt too quiet when we entered, like it was holding its breath. We'd been so focused on becoming grandparents that we'd filled the spare bedroom with baby supplies, crib, changing table, stuffed animals. all the things we'd bought to help our daughter when she came to visit. Helen stood in the doorway of that room, looking at the crib we'd assembled together 3 months ago. "What if she never brings him here?" she asked quietly. "She will." "Tom, what if they don't let her?" I didn't have an answer for that, because the question underneath was worse. What if Emma couldn't? My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, then something made me press accept. "Mr. Patterson?" Male voice, professional, unfamiliar. "This is Eric Daughtry from Highland Medical Center Security. We need to talk about your visit today." "What about it?" "There was an incident during your time in the maternity ward. Some confusion about patient privacy protocols. I wanted to follow up, make sure there are no misunderstandings. I'd been in municipal contracting long enough to recognize threat wrapped in courtesy." "What kind of misunderstandings?" "Sometimes family members get overly concerned, start asking questions that fall outside appropriate channels. I'm sure you understand we need to protect all our patients' rights." "I understand I came to see my daughter and was told I couldn't. That doesn't sound like protecting her rights." Brief pause. Then, "Your daughter has requested limited visitation while she recovers. Hospital policy is to respect patient wishes." "Put her on the phone." "That's not possible right now." "Then this conversation is over." I hung up before he could respond. Helen was staring at me. "Security called you?" "To warn me off." "From what?" "Seeing our own daughter?" I sat down at the kitchen table, pulled out my laptop, opened the browser. Started searching: hospital patient rights, visitation policies, legal guardianship, medical consent. The rabbit hole went deep fast. Helen made coffee, something to do with her hands, while I dug through legal language and procedure manuals. An hour passed, then another. The coffee went cold. Finally, I found it, buried in a legal forum discussion about hospital ethics. "Temporary medical guardianship," I said. Helen came to look over my shoulder. "What's that?" "Legal mechanism for situations where a patient can't make medical decisions, usually used for emergencies, incapacitated patients. Someone else, family member, spouse, gets temporary authority to make decisions on their behalf." "But Emma's not incapacitated. She just gave birth." I kept reading, clicking through case studies and legal precedents. The coffee in my mug had gone completely cold when I found the loophole. "Postpartum psychiatric evaluation," I said quietly. "If a doctor determines a new mother is experiencing postpartum depression or psychosis severe enough to impair judgment, temporary guardianship can be granted to protect both mother and infant." "That's insane. Emma's not..." "Doesn't matter if she is or isn't. Matters what a doctor puts in her chart and who that doctor works for." Helen sank into the chair across from me. Her face had aged 10 years in the last few hours. "Brad's mother," she said. I nodded. Because it made perfect sense now, the pieces locking together with the precision of a system designed to function exactly as intended. Victoria Fleming, with her board memberships and her old money connections, who'd made it clear she didn't think Emma was good enough for her son, who disagreed with every decision Emma made about the wedding, the house, the pregnancy, who now had a legal mechanism to take control. "We should call a lawyer," Helen said. "And tell them what? That we think something's wrong but have no proof? That our daughter texted us saying everything's fine? Tom, we can't just sit here." She was right. But I also knew that going back to that hospital would accomplish nothing except getting me banned permanently. Security already had my name flagged. One more incident, and they'd file a restraining order, claim I was threatening staff, and then I'd have zero access to information. I needed to be smarter than that. "I'm going back," I said. "But not through the front door." "What do you mean?" I closed the laptop, thinking through building layouts and maintenance schedules. Highland Medical Center was a 5-year-old facility, modern, efficient, built to current code, which meant I'd probably worked on it. Not directly, but my company had done subcontractor work for the general contractor. HVAC upgrades, electrical systems, maybe parking garage lighting, which meant I might still have access credentials in the system. More importantly, I knew how those systems worked, where the cameras were positioned, where the blind spots existed, which doors had override codes and which required active badges. "Tom," Helen said carefully, "don't do something stupid." "I'm going to do something smart. There's a difference." "Is there?" I looked at my wife, at the fear and anger and determination in her face, and realized we'd crossed some invisible line. 2 hours ago, we were excited grandparents waiting to meet our grandson. Now we were something else, something harder. "I need to know what happened," I said. "Not what they're telling us happened, what actually happened." Helen held my gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. Be careful. Always am. That was a lie, but it was the kind of lie marriages run on. The small reassurances that let your partner sleep at night while you do what needs doing. I stood, grabbed my keys, headed for the door. Behind me, Helen said quietly, Tom? If Emma really is in trouble... I stopped in the doorway. Then we get her out, I finished, no matter what it takes. The sun was setting as I drove back toward Highland Medical Center, painting the sky in shades of red that looked like a warning. I kept my speed exactly at the limit, signaled every turn, gave other drivers plenty of space. The last thing I needed was a traffic stop on my way to potentially break half a dozen hospital regulations. The parking garage was busier now, shift change, visitors arriving for evening hours. I parked on the third sublevel, away from the elevators and main traffic flow. Sat in the truck for 10 minutes, watching patterns. Security made rounds every 30 minutes. Cameras covered the elevator banks and main walkways, but the corners near the stairwells had blind spots, probably cost-cutting during installation. I'd seen it 1,000 times. Safety systems built to minimum code, with gaps wherever the budget got tight. At 7:17, I got out and walked toward the northeast stairwell, keeping my head down but not suspiciously so. Just another tired visitor heading inside. The stairwell door was marked emergency exit only, alarm will sound, but I knew better. Those alarms got disabled during construction and often never reconnected. Easier to prop the door open during smoke breaks than actually fix the system. I pulled the door. No alarm. The stairwell was concrete and fluorescent lights, institutional echo. I climbed to ground level, then kept going to the second floor. The maternity ward was on 4, but going straight there would be stupid. I needed to look like I belonged, which meant finding the maintenance corridors first. Second floor was orthopedics. Quieter than maternity, mostly post-surgery recovery. I walked past the nurse's station with a nod, clipboard confidence even though I wasn't carrying one. Found what I was looking for near the service elevators, a door marked Maintenance Access, Authorized Personnel Only. The keypad beside it was old enough that I recognized the model. We'd installed dozens of them during the 2018-2020 upgrade period. Default override code was usually 13579, unless someone had bothered to change it, which they rarely did. I punched in the sequence. The lock clicked open. Inside was exactly what I expected. Utility corridor, industrial lighting, pipes and ductwork exposed overhead. These spaces existed behind every modern hospital, the infrastructure spine that kept everything running. And like most backstage areas, they connected to things visitors never saw. I moved quickly, but not running, following the corridor north. Past electrical panels, ventilation equipment, storage rooms full of cleaning supplies. The maintenance corridors paralleled the main hospital layout, which meant I could reach the maternity ward without ever appearing on public security feeds. At the next intersection, I heard voices. 2 men, maintenance staff by the sound of it, discussing a plumbing issue on 5. I pressed back into an alcove, waited for them to pass. They never looked my way. When the corridor was clear again, I kept moving. Reached another access door. This one marked Floor 4 Service. No keypad, just a badge reader. But the door had a push bar on my side. Fire code required emergency exits to open from inside without credentials. I cracked it open, checked the space beyond. Empty hallway, supply closets on either side. Not quite the maternity ward yet, but close. I could hear voices now, the ambient sound of active nursing stations. This was where it got complicated. I couldn't just walk out into the main ward. Too many people who'd recognize me from this afternoon. But the maintenance corridors should connect to service areas, laundry collection, waste disposal, maybe storage rooms. I moved down the service hallway, checking doors, locked, supply closet, locked. Then I found it. Linen storage. The door was propped open with a rolling cart, someone mid-shift not bothering with protocols. Inside was industrial shelving stacked with clean sheets, blankets, hospital gowns, and at the far end, another door. This one unlocked. It opened onto the maternity ward's main corridor, 20 feet from the secure door I'd seen earlier. I could see the nurses' station from here, could hear the quiet conversations of night shift settling in. Visiting hours were nearly over. Families saying goodnight, last checks before lights out. And standing at the secure door, badge in hand, was my son-in-law. He swiped his badge. The lock clicked. He pulled the door open and stepped through into whatever lay beyond. I gave him a 30-second head start. Then I moved. As the story unfolds, hit the hype button, like, subscribe, and write in the comments. Would you forgive them or walk away? The linen storage room smelled like industrial bleach and fabric softener, a chemical combination that burned my nostrils. I stayed pressed against the shelving, watching the corridor through the cracked door. Night shift nurses moved with practiced efficiency, their footsteps muffled by rubber-soled shoes on linoleum. Brad was gone now, disappeared through that secure door. I needed to know what was on the other side, but first I needed to not get caught. A nurse approached the linen room, clipboard in hand. I stepped back deeper into the shadows, positioning myself behind a tall shelving unit. She grabbed an armful of blankets without looking around, humming something under her breath, then left. The door swung shut behind her. I waited another 5 minutes. The ward was quieting down as visiting hours ended, families trickling toward elevators, staff beginning their evening rounds. By 8 o'clock, the corridor traffic had thinned to occasional nurses checking rooms. I checked my phone. No messages from Helen, no calls. I typed out a quick text. Inside. Safe. We'll update soon. Vague enough not to incriminate her if this went sideways. At 8:07, a nurse approached the secure door. She swiped her badge, punched in a code on the adjacent keypad, 4 digits, too quick for me to read, and disappeared through. So, badge and code. 2-factor authentication. I didn't have a badge, and guessing a 4-digit code meant 10,000 possible combinations. Not exactly workable odds, but I had something better. Patience and the understanding that humans always took shortcuts. I settled in to wait. 20 minutes later, a different nurse approached. She swiped her badge, hesitated at the keypad, glanced back over her shoulder. Guilty body language, checking for supervisors. Then she pulled a small post-it note from her pocket, read it, and punched in the code. She crumpled the post-it and shoved it back in her pocket before going through. People who wrote down codes usually kept them close, and people who kept them close usually disposed of them in obvious places. I gave it another 15 minutes, watching the pattern. Staff went through the secure door roughly every 10 to 15 minutes. Some knew the code by heart. Some checked their phones, probably stored in notes apps. One guy looked at his hand where he'd written it in pen. Then around 8:40, a young nurse, probably new, based on how nervous she looked, approached the door with a coffee cup in one hand. She swiped her badge, stared at the keypad like it might bite her, then pulled out her phone. Scrolled through something, nodded to herself, and punched in the code. She went through. 2 minutes later, she came back out. The door swung closed behind her, and she walked quickly toward the nurse's station, still holding her coffee. She'd left her phone sitting on top of the sharps container beside the door. I didn't think, just moved. Stepped out of the linen room, crossed the corridor in 3 strides, grabbed the phone. The screen was still unlocked. I swiped to her notes app. Ward access codes. And there it was. 7238. I memorized it, set the phone back down, and retreated into the linen room before anyone noticed. My heart was hammering hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. Stupid risk. But now I had the code. I gave it another 5 minutes to make sure no one had seen. The corridor stayed quiet. The nurse who'd left her phone came hurrying back, grabbed it with a relieved gasp, and disappeared toward the break room. At 8:51, I stepped out of the linen room, walked to the secure door like I belonged there, but I didn't have a badge. I stood there for a long moment, thinking through options. Could I follow someone through before the door closed? Maybe, but too conspicuous. Could I find a maintenance override? Possibly, but it would take time I didn't have. Then I noticed the door's edge, where the lock mechanism met the frame. Standard electromagnetic lock, power to secure model, which meant if power was interrupted, the lock would release. And the circuit breaker for this section was probably in the maintenance corridor I just left. I backed away from the door, returned to the service hallway, found the access point to the utility corridor, moved quickly back the way I'd come until I reached the electrical panel I'd passed earlier. The panel was labeled with floor sections. 4th floor was subdivided into zones, 4A through 4F. The secure area would be 4D, had to be. That was the northeast quadrant, where private rooms and administrative spaces typically sat in hospital layouts. I opened the panel. Rows of breakers, each labeled with cryptic codes that meant nothing to civilians but everything to contractors. Found 4DA3. That should be corridor lighting and security systems. I flipped it. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a faint change in the ambient hum. Systems dropping offline. I closed the panel and ran back to the service hallway, through the linen storage room into the main corridor. The secure door's light had gone from green to red. Emergency power had kicked in, but electromagnetic locks defaulted to open during power failures. Fire code requirement. I pulled. The door opened. Beyond was another corridor, shorter, with only 4 doors. Private recovery rooms, probably. The kind wealthy patients paid extra for. Soft lighting, artwork on walls, carpet instead of linoleum. This wasn't standard postpartum care. This was the VIP section. I moved quickly to the first door. Window showed an empty room. Second door, same. Third door had the blinds drawn. I tried the handle. Locked. Fourth door, end of the corridor. No window. But I could see light underneath. I knocked. Soft. Professional, like I was staff. No response. I tried the handle. Also locked. "Emma?" I said quietly. "It's Dad." Still nothing. I was about to knock again when I heard footsteps behind me. Fast, multiple people. I turned. 2 security guards moving toward me with purposeful expressions. "Sir, you need to come with us," the first one said. Calm, practiced. The tone you use when you're confident in your authority. "I'm just looking for my daughter." "Sir, now." The second guard had his hand on his radio. Calling for backup would mean more people, more attention, more chance of this turning into something I couldn't control. I raised my hand slowly. "Okay, no problem." They escorted me back through the secure door. Power had been restored, the electromagnetic lock re-engaged, down the main corridor toward the elevators. Other nurses watched but didn't intervene. This wasn't their problem. We took the elevator down to the first floor, then through a side corridor to a door marked Security Office. Inside was a small room with monitors showing camera feeds, a desk, 2 chairs. Standard setup. The first guard gestured to a chair. "Sit." I sat. He remained standing, arms crossed. The second guard stayed by the door. Both of them were younger than me, fit, probably ex-military or law enforcement. This was going to be a conversation they expected to win. "Mr. Patterson," the first guard said, "I'm going to be very clear. You were told this afternoon that your daughter requested limited visitation. You came back anyway and accessed a restricted area. That's trespassing. I'm her father. And she's a legal adult who has expressed her wishes through her physician and her husband. Hospital policy requires us to respect those wishes." "Then let me talk to her. Let me hear it from her directly." "That's not possible." "Why not?" "Because she's under medical care and not accepting visitors." I leaned back in the chair, let my frustration show. Guy like me, they expected anger. Probably hoped for it. Easier to justify calling the police if I got aggressive. "Look," I said, forcing my voice calm. "I'm worried about my daughter. That's it. I'm not trying to cause problems." "Then go home, Mr. Patterson. Let the medical staff do their job. When your daughter is ready for visitors, her husband will contact you." Her husband is the problem. That got a reaction. Brief, but there. The guard's expression shifted slightly, calculation behind his eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Emma's been isolated for weeks. Phone calls cut off, text messages that don't sound like her. Now she's behind a locked door and I'm being told I can't see her. You don't find that concerning?" "I find it concerning that you're making accusations without evidence." "Evidence of what? I haven't accused anyone of anything. I'm just asking questions." "Questions that suggest you believe your daughter is being held against her will. That's a serious allegation." "Is she? Being held against her will?" The guard's jaw tightened. "Mrs. Fleming is receiving appropriate medical care. That's all I'm authorized to tell you." "Mrs. Fleming," I said. "Not Emma Patterson." "She took her husband's name when they married." "Legally, yes. But she still uses Patterson professionally. Has for 5 years. Why would hospital records suddenly change that?" The guard glanced at his partner, who'd been silent this whole time. Some unspoken communication passed between them. "Mr. Patterson," the first guard said slowly, "I'm going to give you some advice. Go home. Wait for your son-in-law to contact you. Don't come back to this hospital unless you're invited, because if you do, we'll have you arrested for trespassing. Do you understand?" I stood up slowly. "I understand you're doing your job. I also understand that job includes protecting patients, all patients, even from their own families when necessary." "Exactly. So ask yourself, who told you Emma requested limited visitation? Was it her, or was it her husband?" The guard's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Doubt, maybe, or recognition that he was in the middle of something more complicated than he wanted to be. "Go home," he repeated. They escorted me out through the main lobby, made sure I got in my truck, watched me drive away. I could see them in my rearview mirror, standing under the entrance lights, making sure I was actually leaving. I drove 2 blocks, pulled into a 24-hour drugstore parking lot, and sat there with the engine running. My phone rang. "Helen. Where are you?" "Drugstore on Highland Avenue. They kicked me out." "Tom, what happened?" I told her. the maintenance corridors, the secure door, the guards. Helen listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Emma's last name, she finally said, in the hospital system. Fleming, not Patterson. She never legally changed it. I was there when she filed the paperwork after the wedding. She kept Patterson as her legal name, just added Fleming professionally for Brad's family, made his mother happy without actually changing her identity. So the hospital records are wrong. Or they've been changed. Tom, if someone's manipulating her legal identity in the system, that was a level of control I hadn't fully considered. Changing medical records, changing names, creating a paper trail that made Emma look like someone she wasn't. Someone who might be mentally unstable, someone who needed guardianship. I need to get into those records, I said. How? I don't know yet. Tom, they're going to arrest you if you go back. Then I won't go back, not directly. Helen made a frustrated sound. What does that mean? Means I need to think smarter. They're expecting me to act like a concerned father. Emotional, irrational, easy to predict. You are a concerned father. I know, but I can't act like one. Not if we're going to actually help Emma. Another silence. Then Helen said, What do you need me to do? And that's when I realized my wife wasn't just worried anymore. She was ready to fight. Find out who Emma's primary physician is. Her actual OB, not whoever Brad's family pushed on her. I need to know if there's anyone in that hospital who might actually be on her side. Okay, what else? See if you can get in touch with any of Emma's friends, people she knew before Brad. Find out if any of them have heard from her recently. They'll think I'm crazy. Let them. Better crazy than quiet. I could hear Helen moving around the house, already pulling out her laptop. Tom, be careful, please. Always. I ended the call and sat there in the parking lot, watching late-night shoppers drift in and out of the drugstore. People buying cold medicine, diapers, late-night snacks. Normal problems, normal lives. Mine had stopped being normal the moment that nurse told me I couldn't see my daughter. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Stop asking questions. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed back, or what? No response. I drove home through empty streets, checking my mirrors more than usual. No one was following me, at least not obviously, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Paranoia, probably. Though given the last 12 hours, maybe not. Helen was in the kitchen when I got home, laptop open, phone pressed to her ear. She waved me over, put the call on speaker. Haven't heard from her in about a month, a woman's voice was saying. I tried calling a few times, but it just goes to voicemail. Did she seem okay before that? Helen asked. I mean, tired. She was 8 months pregnant. But yeah, she seemed fine. Excited about the baby. Nervous about Brad's mom being so involved, but that's normal, right? Did she mention anything specific about Victoria? Any concerns? Pause. She said Victoria was pushing her to use a specific pediatrician, some family friend. Emma wanted to choose her own doctor, but Brad kept saying it would make things easier if they used his mother's connections. Emma was frustrated, but trying to keep the peace. Helen's eyes met mine across the kitchen. Thank you, Rachel. If you hear from Emma, will you call me immediately? Of course. Mrs. Patterson, is everything okay? I hope so. Helen ended the call and pulled up a document on her laptop. I've talked to 4 of Emma's friends. None of them have heard from her directly in 3 to 6 weeks. All communication has been through text messages. All brief, cheerful, not like her? Exactly like her texting style 5 years ago, before she developed her current patterns. Someone's responding, but it's not Emma. I sat down across from her, let that sink in. Someone was reading Emma's messages, responding as her, maintaining the fiction that everything was fine. For 6 weeks. I found her OB, Helen continued. Dr. Linda Vance. Private practice, well regarded. Emma had been seeing her for the entire pregnancy, right up until 2 months ago. What happened 2 months ago? According to Dr. Vance's office, I called pretending to reschedule, Emma transferred care to Dr. Kenneth Hartley, affiliated with Highland Medical Center, also happens to serve on the board of directors. Let me guess, family friend of the Flemings? Helen pulled up another page. Kenneth Hartley and Victoria Fleming have served together on 3 charitable boards. His practice specializes in high-risk pregnancies and postpartum psychiatric care. Postpartum psychiatric care. Tom, I think we know what they're doing. I did, but saying it out loud made it real in a way I wasn't ready for. They're setting her up, I said quietly, making it look like she's mentally unstable so they can justify taking control. Legally, publicly, with medical documentation to back it up. Why? That was the question that didn't have an easy answer. Control was the obvious response, but that felt incomplete. Victoria Fleming was wealthy enough, connected enough, powerful enough that she didn't need to go to these lengths just to manage her son's family. Unless this wasn't about control, unless it was about something else. The baby, Helen said softly. Tom, what if this is about the baby? I looked at her. What do you mean? Emma and Brad have been having problems for months. She told me he'd been distant, preoccupied, that she'd found out he'd taken a substantial loan against their house without telling her. She was thinking about leaving him. When? 6 months ago, before she got pregnant. The pregnancy, I think she hoped it would fix things, give them a reason to try harder. My daughter had been planning to leave my son-in-law, then got pregnant, then suddenly transferred to a doctor who specialized in psychiatric care, then disappeared behind locked doors after giving birth. The timeline clicked together with brutal clarity. If Emma leaves Brad, I said slowly, she gets custody, primary custody, almost certainly. Brad would have visitation, child support obligations, but Emma would have the baby. But if Emma is deemed mentally unfit, then Brad gets custody, and with Victoria's resources, connections, money, they could make sure Emma never sees her son unsupervised again. Helen's face had gone pale. That's insane. That's legal. If you have the right doctors, the right documentation, the right lawyers, it's not criminal, it's just efficient. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of it settling over us like concrete. We need proof, Helen finally said. I know. Real proof. Not suspicions. Not circumstantial evidence. Something that would hold up if we tried to fight this legally. Which means getting into that hospital room, talking to Emma directly, recording what she says. They'll arrest you if you try? Then I won't try, not the way they expect. Helen closed her laptop, looked at me with an expression I recognized from 30 years of marriage. The look that said she knew I was about to do something reckless and she was going to support me anyway because that's what family meant. What's the plan? She asked. I pulled out my own laptop, opened a browser, started searching. Highland Medical Center staffing schedules, shift patterns, maintenance protocols. Most of that information wasn't publicly available, but I knew where to look. Contractor forums, supply company databases, equipment service records. Hospitals ran on schedules, everything happened at predictable times, food service, cleaning crews, equipment maintenance, shift changes. Find the pattern, find the gap. I need to know exactly when Brad visits Emma, I said, and when Victoria does. I need their schedule. How do we get that? We watch. Starting tomorrow morning. Take turns, document everything. Tom, they'll see us. Not if we're smart about it. I pulled up a map of the area around Highland Medical Center. 3 coffee shops within visual range of the main entrance. 2 restaurants with patio seating. A public library across the street with windows facing the parking garage. We could watch without being obvious. Track patterns. Build a timeline. This could take days, Helen said. Or hours. Wealthy people love routines. Makes them feel in control. Helen nodded slowly. Okay. We start tomorrow. 6 a.m.? 5. Earlier is better. Less traffic. Easier to notice patterns. She stood, started to walk away, then stopped. Tom, when we get her out, because we are getting her out, what happens after? After. To Brad. To Victoria. To everyone who did this. I met her eyes and saw my own rage reflected back. I haven't figured that part out yet, I said, but I would. I spent the rest of the night planning. Drew diagrams of the hospital layout from memory, marked camera positions, noted blind spots, pulled up property records for the Fleming house, massive estate in the north suburbs, gated community, private security, not somewhere I could just show up and start asking questions. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Final warning, stay away. I took a screenshot, saved it to a folder Helen and I had started labeled evidence, then turned off my phone. Let them think I was scared. Let them think I'd backed off. People always underestimated guys like me. I wore flannel and work boots, drove an old truck, spoke in a flat Midwestern accent. To people like the Flemings, I was invisible. Background scenery. No threat. They were about to learn how wrong they were. At 4:30 a.m., I showered, dressed in neutral clothes, jeans, dark jacket, nothing memorable, made coffee, filled 2 travel mugs. Helen came downstairs at 4:45, moving quietly, her face set in grim determination. We didn't talk much, didn't need to. 30 years of marriage meant we could communicate in glances and gestures. By 5:15, we were parked in the public library lot across from Highland Medical Center. The building was just starting to wake up. Lights coming on in various wings, early shift arriving, ambulances bringing overnight emergencies. Helen had binoculars. I had a camera with a telephoto lens. Between us, we could cover most of the main entrance and parking areas. The sun rose slowly, painting the hospital exterior in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful morning. The kind that made everything feel like it might be okay. It wasn't. At 6:47 a.m., Brad's car pulled into the parking garage. Black Audi, this year's model. I got 3 clear photos of him entering. He came out 42 minutes later. Starbucks, cup in hand, checked his phone, climbed back in his car, drove away. 42 minutes, Helen said quietly. That's not a quick check-in. No, that's a meeting. At 9:13, Victoria Fleming arrived. Different entrance, private parking section reserved for board members and major donors. She moved like she owned the building, at which, given her financial contributions, she probably did. She stayed for 97 minutes. When she emerged, she was with 2 other people, a man in a suit and a woman carrying a briefcase. Lawyers, probably. They stood in the parking area talking for another 15 minutes, then separated to their respective vehicles. They're building their case, I said. Helen lowered the binoculars. What do we do? We find someone inside who's willing to talk. Who? I thought back to the previous night. The nervous young nurse who'd left her phone sitting out. The way some staff had looked uncomfortable when I'd been escorted out. Not everyone in that hospital was part of this. Most were probably just following orders, respecting what they'd been told was a patient's wishes. But someone had to suspect something was wrong. The night shift, I said. Less supervision, less administrative oversight. Someone on night shift might be willing to talk if we approach them carefully. Helen nodded. We wait until tonight? We wait until tonight. The rest of the day crawled past. We went home, tried to eat, failed. I checked my phone compulsively. No messages from Emma, no calls from the hospital, nothing from Brad. Just silence. Around 4 p.m., Helen's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered, put it on speaker. Mrs. Patterson? Male voice. Older, professional. This is Kenneth Hartley. I'm the attending physician caring for your daughter. Helen's hand tightened around the phone. Is she okay? She's progressing well. However, I wanted to reach out personally to address some concerns. I understand there was an incident at the hospital last night involving your husband. He was trying to see his daughter. I appreciate that, but I need you to understand that Emma is in a very fragile state right now. Postpartum recovery can be complicated, particularly when there are underlying mental health factors. Emma doesn't have mental health issues. Mrs. Patterson, with respect, postpartum depression and psychosis can develop rapidly. Emma has been experiencing severe mood swings, paranoid ideation, difficulty bonding with her infant. These are serious symptoms that require careful management. Then let us help manage them. Let us see her. That's not recommended at this time. Emma has specifically requested limited contact with outside family while she works through these issues with our therapeutic team. It's important that we respect her autonomy. Helen's eyes met mine. I shook my head slightly. Don't push too hard. Don't give him ammunition. How long? Helen asked. How long until we can see her? That depends on her progress. Could be a few days, could be longer. I'll keep you updated. Can we at least talk to her on the phone? Not at this stage, but I promise you she's receiving excellent care, and when she's ready, she'll reach out. The call ended. Helen set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. They're isolating her completely, she said, breaking her down, making her think no one's coming to help. We're coming to help. Are we? Tom, they have doctors, lawyers, security. What do we have? I looked at my wife, at the fear and frustration and helplessness in her face, and realized I needed to give her something concrete to hold on to. We have the truth, I said, and we have surprise. They think they've won. That we'll back off, accept their narrative, wait quietly while they destroy our daughter's life. Won't we? No. Helen studied my face for a long moment. Then something shifted in her expression, steel beneath the fear. What's the plan? She asked. We go back tonight. Different approach. We find someone who'll talk, and we get Emma on record saying she doesn't want to be there. That's not a plan. That's barely a concept. It's a start. We spent the rest of the evening preparing. I pulled together a small recording device. Nothing fancy, just a decent microphone that could capture clear audio. Helen drafted questions, the kind that couldn't be answered with rehearsed responses. Things only Emma would know. At 10:15 p.m., we drove back to Highland Medical Center. Night shift was in full swing now. Quieter, fewer visitors, reduced administrative presence. We parked in the same spot as morning, watched the patterns. At 10:47, a nurse emerged from the main entrance, lit a cigarette in the designated smoking area. Young, maybe late 20s, moving with the exhausted shuffle of someone halfway through a 12-hour shift. I recognized her, the one who'd left her phone out, who'd looked nervous around the secure door. "That's her," I said. Helen looked doubtful. "You're just going to walk up and start asking questions?" "You are." "What?" "She's less likely to see you as a threat. Man my age, my size, approaching her alone at night, she'll shut down immediately. But another woman, concerned mother, just looking for information about her daughter, that might work." Helen stared at me. "Tom, I don't... You can do this. You're a mother whose daughter is in trouble. That's not an act. That's just truth." She took a deep breath, nodded, opened the car door. I watched her walk across the parking lot, timed carefully to intersect with the nurse as she finished her cigarette. Casual. Coincidental. They talked for maybe 3 minutes. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I could read body language. The nurse was defensive at first, shaking her head. Then something Helen said made her pause. "Look around. Consider." Helen pulled out her phone, showed the nurse something. Emma's photo, probably. The nurse's expression changed. She nodded slowly, said something brief, then walked back toward the hospital entrance. Helen returned to the car. Her hands were shaking. "Well?" I asked. "Her name's Katie. She's been on Emma's care team. She says something's wrong." "Did she say what?" "Not specifically, but she said Emma's being kept sedated most of the time. Light sedation, not enough to be dangerous, but enough to keep her compliant. Katie thinks it's excessive for standard postpartum care." "Did she say who ordered it?" "Dr. Hartley, with approval from Emma's husband." My jaw clenched hard enough that my teeth ached. "Will she testify to that?" "She's scared. Said she could lose her license if she spoke out without proof, but she gave me something." Helen pulled out a small piece of paper with a number written on it. "What's this?" "Emma's room number, and Katie said security does rounds every hour. Between rounds, there's a 6-minute window where no one's actively monitoring the ward cameras. She said if someone were to visit during that window, they might not be noticed immediately." I looked at the paper, then at my wife. "When's the next window?" "Midnight, exactly." I checked my watch. 11:03, less than an hour. "We need to be ready," I said. Helen reached into her bag, pulled out the recording device I'd prepared. "I've been thinking about what to ask her. We need confirmation that she doesn't want to be there, that she hasn't consented to the guardianship, that she's being held against her will. Keep it simple, open-ended questions. Let her talk." "What if she's too sedated to answer?" "Then we have evidence of that too." We sat in the car as the minutes ticked past. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing left to say. We were past planning, past discussion. Now it was just execution. At 11:54, we got out of the car. 6 minutes to get inside, reach the 4th floor, find Emma's room, get her on record, and get out before security noticed. Impossible odds. We walked toward the hospital entrance anyway. Highland Park Coffee was busy at 10 a.m. Morning rush, people getting their caffeine fix before work, students camping with laptops, mothers with strollers. The kind of ambient noise and activity that made serious conversations difficult, but witnesses plentiful. I arrived 15 minutes early, scouted the layout. David Chen was already there, seated near the back with a newspaper, looking like just another customer. We didn't acknowledge each other. Brad arrived precisely at 10 USA, because of course he did. Punctuality as a power move. He ordered some complicated espresso drink, paid with a black credit card, then scanned the room until he spotted me. I'd chosen a table by the window. Visible. Public. "Tom," he said, sitting across from me. "Thanks for meeting. Get to the point." He took a sip of his coffee, the picture of composure. "I know you think I'm the villain here, but I'm not. I love Emma. Everything I've done has been to protect her and our son. You drugged her, isolated her, stole her baby. I got her medical treatment. Emma was experiencing severe postpartum depression. She wasn't thinking clearly. The isolation wasn't punishment. It was therapeutic necessity. Says the doctor your mother put on payroll." Brad's expression tightened slightly. "Dr. Hartley is a respected physician. Who serves on 3 boards with your mother, who's received substantial donations from your family foundation, who has every financial incentive to diagnose exactly what you wanted diagnosed. That's a serious accusation. It's a provable fact. Your mother's foundation donated $200,000 to Highland Medical Center's psychiatric wing last year. Dr. Hartley runs that wing. You want to pretend that's coincidence? Brad set down his coffee with deliberate care. What do you want, Tom? Emma back with her baby, you staying away, guardianship dissolved. That's not possible. The court has determined the court was lied to. We have an independent psychiatric evaluation showing Emma is completely competent. We're filing an emergency motion to dissolve the guardianship today. Something flickered across Brad's face. Surprise, maybe. He recovered quickly, but I'd seen it. Even if the guardianship is dissolved, he said, I'm still the father. I still have legal rights. Emma can't just take our son and disappear. She's not disappearing. She's going home, to her family, where she's safe. Safe from what? From me? I'm her husband. Are you? I leaned forward slightly. Because from where I'm sitting, you look more like her jailer. Brad's jaw clenched. I tried to do this the easy way, give you a chance to walk away gracefully. I don't walk away from my daughter. Then you're going to force me to get ugly, and trust me, Tom, you don't want that. My family has resources you can't imagine, lawyers, connections, influence. We will bury you in legal fees until you can't afford to keep fighting. We'll destroy Emma's credibility, we'll take full custody, and you'll never see your grandson. I smiled. Couldn't help it, because this was exactly the move I'd expected. You done? I asked. Brad blinked. What? With the threats. You done? I'm telling you reality. No, you're telling me how you think the world works. Rich people push buttons, poor people fall in line. That's your reality? Want to know mine? I pulled out my phone, opened a folder, slid it across the table. Brad looked at the screen. His face went pale. That's your mother's tax returns for her primary foundation, I said. The one that donated to Highland Medical Center. Notice anything interesting about the timing? Donation filed 2 weeks after Emma announced her pregnancy. Almost like someone was preparing to need influence at that specific hospital. How did you? Public records. Foundation taxes are available online if you know where to look. And I've spent 30 years learning how to dig through municipal systems. Turns out wealthy people aren't as careful with their paper trails as they think. Brad was recovering, trying to regain control. This proves nothing. By itself? No. But combined with Dr. Hartley's financial disclosures, also public, also showing substantial connection to your family, and Emma's testimony about being coerced, starts to look like a pattern. I pulled up another document. Then there's this, your law firm's client list, specifically the 3 major clients you personally handle. All 3 have business before the state medical board. All 3 have pending investigations into improper billing practices. Want to guess who sits on that medical board? Brad's eyes widened slightly. Dr. Kenneth Hartley, I continued. Who has the authority to influence those investigations? Who suddenly has enormous incentive to keep your family happy? That's not just conflict of interest, Brad. That's potential corruption, the kind that makes headlines. You're bluffing. I leaned back, took a sip of my own coffee. Try me. File for custody. Drag this into court, and I will make sure every single connection, every financial tie, every questionable decision gets entered into public record. I'll call reporters. I'll contact ethics boards. I'll make your mother's foundations radioactive. You wouldn't dare. Wouldn't I? See, that's what you never understood about people like me. You think we're cautious because we're scared, but we're cautious because we're smart. And when smart people stop being cautious, that's when rich people should worry. Brad stared at me for a long moment. I could see him recalculating, reassessing. This wasn't the beaten-down father-in-law he'd expected. What do you want? He asked again, quieter this time. Already told you. Emma gets her baby back. Guardianship dissolved. You and your mother stay away. And if I agree, then this stays private. No reporters, no ethics boards, no headlines. You walk away clean. Emma won't come back to me. No, she won't. Brad looked out the window, watching traffic pass. When he spoke again, his voice was different, smaller somehow. I did love her, at the start. What happened? My mother. She thought Emma wasn't right for our family. Not educated enough, not connected enough. Said she'd drag down my career. I told myself Mom was wrong. But then Emma got pregnant and Mom said this was our chance. That if Emma proved unfit, we could... He trailed off. Steal the baby and cut her out. Protect my son from an unstable mother. That's how Mom phrased it. Brad laughed bitterly. God, when I say it out loud, it sounds monstrous. It is monstrous. I know, I got lost in it. Mom's so sure about everything. Makes it easy to stop questioning. Brad. I waited until he looked at me. Your son deserves better than this. Better than manipulation and custody battles and parents who use him as a weapon. Let him go. Let Emma be his mother. Be a father from a distance if you want, but let them have peace. He nodded slowly. I'll talk to my mother. Convince her to drop the guardianship fight. Can you control her? She listens to me, sometimes, if I push. Then push, because if this goes to court, your family's reputation won't survive. I'll make sure of it. Brad stood, left his coffee half finished. I'll call my lawyer today. Have the guardianship paperwork withdrawn. And Emma? Tell her I'm sorry. For all of it. He left without another word. I sat there for a few minutes, letting my heart rate settle. David Chen approached, sat where Brad had been. That was risky, he said. Did it work? We'll find out. If he actually files to withdraw the guardianship, then yes. If he was playing you to buy time, then we're in trouble. He wasn't playing me. How do you know? Because he broke at the end. You could see it. Whatever connection he had to Emma, whatever he felt before his mother got involved, it's still there, buried. Guilt is powerful leverage. Chen nodded slowly. You're better at this than you should be. I'm motivated. We left separately. I drove back to the lake cabin, found Emma and Helen waiting anxiously on the porch. Well? Helen asked. He agreed, said he'd withdraw the guardianship. Emma's face crumpled with relief. Really? Really. But we wait for confirmation. Don't celebrate until the paperwork's actually filed. The rest of the day crawled past. Every hour felt like 10. Emma paced. Helen made anxious phone calls to Chen's office, checking for updates. I sat on the porch, watching the lake, trying to believe this would actually work. At 4:47 p.m., Chen called. It's done, he said. Brad's lawyer just filed a motion to withdraw the temporary guardianship, citing changed circumstances and recognition that Emma is capable of making informed decisions regarding her care. What about the baby? Custody reverts to Emma immediately upon guardianship dissolution. Judge has already signed the order. Emma can pick up her son tomorrow morning from Highland Medical Center. I heard Emma scream with joy inside the cabin. Helen was crying, laughing, both at once. Tom, Chen said, whatever you said to Brad, it worked. I don't know how you did it, but you got them to back down. I just made the cost of winning too high. Well, it's over. Emma gets her baby back. She can go home. I thanked him, ended the call. Went inside to find Emma and Helen hugging each other, tears streaming down both their faces. You did it, Emma said, pulling me into the embrace. Dad, you actually did it. We all did it. But that wasn't quite true, and we all knew it. That night, we ordered pizza, opened a bottle of wine Carol had been saving for a special occasion. Emma was giddy with relief, planning what she'd need for the baby, how she'd set up her life post-Brad. Helen was cautiously optimistic, already looking ahead to next steps. I tried to match their energy, but something was nagging at me, a feeling I couldn't quite name. Around 10 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I stepped outside to answer. Mr. Patterson? Victoria Fleming's voice, cold and controlled. We need to talk. I don't think we do. My son has made a terrible mistake, one that I intend to correct. My stomach tightened. The guardianship has been withdrawn. It's over. It's not over until I say it's over. You blackmailed my son with threats and public exposure. That was very foolish. Your son made his own choice. My son is weak when it comes to Emma. He always has been. But I'm not weak. And I don't respond well to threats. Mrs. Fleming, you've made an enemy today, Mr. Patterson, and you have no idea what that means. I've spent decades building connections, establishing influence. I could destroy your business, your reputation, your family's financial stability with 3 phone calls. Then make them. Silence on the other end. Then, excuse me? Make your calls. Use your influence. Come at me with everything you have. Because I'm done being polite. I'm done respecting your power. You tried to steal my daughter's baby, and you're damn lucky all I did was threaten to expose you. You can't talk to me that way. I just did. Here's how this works now. You stay away from Emma. You stay away from your grandson. You disappear from their lives completely. And if you don't, I will burn down every foundation, every board membership, every connection you've built. I will make it my life's work to expose what you did. You have no proof. I have Emma's testimony. I have medical records showing over-medication. I have financial documents showing your family's connection to Dr. Hartley. It's enough to create doubt, and doubt is poison for people like you. Victoria's breathing was audible now, sharp with rage. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Because if you come after Emma again, I won't threaten. I'll act. And you'll lose everything that matters to you. Reputation, influence, respectability. All of it. Gone. I hung up. Stood there on the porch, hands shaking slightly from adrenaline. Helen appeared in the doorway. Was that? Victoria, making threats. What did you say? I told her to back off, or I'd destroy her. Helen's expression was unreadable. Will you? If I have to, yes? She nodded slowly. Good. We stood together in the darkness, listening to the lake water lap against the shore. Inside, Emma was singing softly to herself, planning her reunion with her son. It's really over? Helen asked. I don't know, I admitted. Victoria doesn't strike me as someone who accepts defeat. Then what do? We stay ready, and we make sure Emma's protected. That night, I barely slept. Kept thinking about Victoria's tone. Not defeated, not scared. Angry, yes, but also calculating. Like she was already planning her next move. At 3 a.m., I got up, did more research, dug deeper into the Fleming family's connections, their business interests, their social network, looking for vulnerabilities, places where pressure could be applied if needed. I found something interesting around 4:30. Victoria's primary foundation, the one that funded Highland Medical Center, was scheduled to host a charity gala next week. Major event, hundreds of attendees, significant media coverage, the kind of public gathering where reputation mattered. An idea started forming. Darker than my conversation with Brad. More direct. But if Victoria came after Emma again, I'd need to be ready with something bigger than threats. I'd need to be ready to make those threats real. The sun rose over the lake, painting everything gold and pink. Beautiful morning, the kind that promised good things. I hoped that promise wasn't a lie.